Salutations, industrialists. It's Mark again. I'm a producer working on Gilded Destiny. Today, we're going to talk about technology. If you haven't already, be sure to check out the latest alpha roadmap for October, showing what we completed in September. Also, in today's video, you'll see that we have already made some changes to the map compared to last month. I want to reiterate again that the map is far from finalized and will undergo significant change to the map artwork still. We intend to change many of the features you currently see displayed on the map. We have been working on a foundational rewrite to the map to improve performance. Performance has already been significantly improved, resulting in higher FPS, lower processor and GPU load, and more. Stay tuned, and we will share more once the map artwork has been more finalized. Okay, without further ado, let's chat about the main features of the technology system in Gilded Destiny. In Gilded Destiny, technology is split into three trees: academia, industry, and military. Each of these disciplines has its own separate research point type, which are generated from special research buildings and from POPs. Different professions will generate different amount of research points for each discipline. For instance, officers generate military research points, while bureaucrats generate academic research points, and intellectuals generate a lot of research points for all three disciplines. When selecting a new tech to research, you'll get a random selection of 3 from that discipline to choose from. Sometimes, a tech may already have some points contributed to unlocking it. We'll get to that in a minute. Once the tech has been picked, all the research points you're generating for that discipline will start contributing to unlocking that tech until it's completed, after which its effects will be applied to your country. Sometimes, those effects are straightforward bonuses to things like production, or unlocking certain buildings or policies or what have you. However, sometimes there's a bit more to it. A good example is something like the needle gun, for which we'll need to provide a bit of historical context. So prior to the American Civil War, the US Army did a report on the breech-loading needle guns that were being produced in Europe. They were aware that these guns could be fired and reloaded much faster than their muzzle-loading counterparts, and yet they didn't adopt them. Even when war began, neither side took much advantage of the new technology. They bought plenty of other firearms from Europe, but that's a whole other thing. One of their primary reasons for not adopting the new gun was in fact to do with its main advantage. Since it could fire more quickly, soldiers would expend ammunition more quickly, and it was felt that poorly trained or panicking soldiers would be much more likely to waste ammunition in this fashion. The ammunition costs and the logistics required to equip regular infantry with these weapons was enough to make them hold off until after the Civil War. Of course, we can represent all of that pretty easily by having one of this tech's effects be to significantly increase the ammunition consumption of all regular infantry, even as it increases their combat stats. We also said in a previous dev diary that you'd be able to influence the political opinions of your population. Well, one of the ways you'll be able to do this is through technology. Some techs will make certain political views or certain policies more attractive, and the effect will be more significant for the first few countries that research those techs before decreasing as more countries research it. The notion being that the birthplace of an idea often, but certainly not always, becomes something of a hotbed for that idea. So there are some techs that you may end up wanting to avoid for as long as possible, depending on the kind of nation you're trying to foster. However, you won't always be able to keep those techs at bay indefinitely, as this is where research diffusion comes into play. So research diffusion is essentially something that happens automatically. A tech that you've unlocked but haven't yet researched will randomly be selected and start getting research points contributed to its progress, providing another country you're interacting with has already researched that tech. The random selection isn't totally random though, because the types of interaction you're having with other countries will impact which discipline you're more likely to receive a diffusing tech from. If you're in a lot of wars, you're more likely to get a military tech. If you've got a lot of trade partners, you're more likely to get an academic tech. And if you're receiving a lot of immigrants, you're more likely to get an industry tech. It's a bit more complex than that, of course. This is only in a very broad sense. Also, which countries you're at war with or trading with or receiving immigrants from may affect the techs you can receive. If more of them have it, you're more likely to get it. Ultimately, this means that if you're desperately trying to prevent an idea from spreading to your country, you may need to take some pretty drastic diplomatic measures to keep it from being fully researched. Likewise, if you're at war with a country while you have a technological edge, it's possible that advantage won't last forever. The diffusion cycle refreshes every month or so to respond to changes, so you're not just stuck with a particular diffusing tech indefinitely. But if a lot of other countries have it and you don't, it's increasingly likely to be the one that's selected. Of course, research diffusion also acts as one of the ways countries can catch up, technologically speaking. At the beginning of the 19th century, there was a pretty significant difference between countries in terms of industry, military, and politics. So countries will, of course, start at different positions within the tech tree. However, countries will have a chance to close, or at the very least reduce, that gap through diplomacy, diffusion, policies, population management, buildings, and events, especially given the 2 event chain goals reached during our Kickstarter campaign. To go back to the tech trees for a moment, it's worth mentioning that not all techs are created equal. For one thing, to preserve at least some level of historical accuracy, techs from later decades are harder to get the further away from them you currently are. So even if you try to make a beeline for the internal combustion engine in 1830, the chance of it actually turning up as a tech to research are pretty slim. What's more, later techs usually cost more research points to unlock, so even if it does turn up, researching it too early might prove to be incredibly inefficient. Of course, the whole point of a tech tree is also to lock techs behind other techs, and in some cases, techs are locked behind techs in other disciplines. Take celluloid, for example, the first man-made organic plastic made from cellulose. That's in the industry tree, and it gives you a pretty decent boost to industry research point production for your intellectuals as they become excited about all the new possibilities that this new material opens up, camera film eventually being one of them. To get celluloid to appear as an option for industry though, you'll first need to have developed cytology and the theory of chemical structure so that your inventors understand both cell biology and the arrangement of molecules. Both of those are in the academia tree. They are, after all, theories awaiting practical application. Ultimately, the interaction of the disciplines means that focusing on just one discipline may eventually put you in something of a bind, and plenty of the academics and inventors of the period also certainly didn't just stay in their own lane. However, while going wide has its advantages, there is also an advantage to getting to a tech first. As already mentioned, some techs have diminishing effects each time they're researched, but all techs also decrease the amount of prestige they give each time they're researched. Leading the way in any technological field is, after all, a position of prestige in and of itself. So sometimes it'll be worth grabbing a tech that you're perhaps not that interested in just for the satisfaction of getting ahead of your rivals. Speaking of getting ahead of your rivals, you'll want to pay close attention to your research leaders, the academics, inventors, and military theorists you can appoint to lead your research institutions. Each discipline can have one leader appointed to lead the field, some of whom will grant considerable bonuses. In particular, actual historical persons who created or discovered certain technologies will contribute a large amount to points to unlocking those technologies when in the corresponding research leader position, while some will also confer other benefits on your research establishments. You'll need to take care though. Your research leaders will have a chance of developing both favorable and unfavorable traits the longer they stay in office. They could become brilliant mentors, lecturers, or publicists that advance the entire field and usher in a new generation of scholars and inventors. Or they could end up burnt out, narcissistic, regressive, overprotective, and a downright menace to the establishments they are supposed to represent. This is a historically inspired game, after all. That's probably a good note to end this Dev Diary on. We hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, if you have any questions or comments, let us know below. Lastly, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and if you have not done so already, add Gilded Destiny to your Steam wishlist. Until our paths converge once more, we bid thee farewell. May your destiny be a gilded one.